It was the early part of autumn, and the wind howled outside. The creaking sound of the old tree shaking its leaves and bending in the wind could be heard over the wind. The rain and the hail hammered against the windows on all sides of the building. A whistle of varying pitch could be heard as the wind insinuated itself into the gaps around the sash windows and the door. The wind could also be heard in the chimney, alternately drawing on the fire and then a backdraft pushing smoke in curling fingers up and around the chimney breast, reaching up to the mantelpiece and adding to the aged marks on the stone above the hearth. The catch on the front door rattled intermittently, as if someone was outside but only half-heartedly wanted to come in. It was not a time to be out, and in fact there were only 3 people in the bar that night. The landlord was idly polishing glasses, leaning into a comfortable corner of the bar. Old John, the coal merchant, was playing darts by himself, and I was sitting on a settle with my back to the door, trying to dry my boots by the fireplace. Now, it isn't a good pub unless there's a really good fire in winter. And this was exactly the right night for it. It was a proper coal fire too, not a coke fire or a wood fire or a smokeless fuel fire, but a proper old-fashioned anthracite coal fire. Real coal, smooth pieces of coal shining like jewels among the flames. The fire in between glowed like molten lava, smoke curling from in between. Dark red and blue and green flames flickered. There was the occasional hiss of gas suddenly escaping from a piece of coal with a corkscrew of smoke or flame as it caught fire. Now these fires had been a feature of my childhood in my parents' and my grandparents' houses. As I slowly drank my pint, I stared into the fire. The fire drew me into its depths. There was the fascination in the sounds and colours and smells and shapes, the mystery of its pulsing life, the memories of time spent as a child doing the very same thing. The comfort and safety of its warmth and sound and smell wrapped itself around me. It was peaceful too. The landlord didn't believe in TV or music or bleeping one-armed bandits. Thank heaven. What other reason was for me to be there other than to enjoy the fire and a good pint of bitter? I was warm. It seemed to be a naughty luxury to be inside whilst the storm carried on its business out. The only sound was the storm and the fire and the occasional knock of John's darts hitting the target. No vehicles drove past. There were going to be no other customers that evening. I was dropping off in the heat and the comfort. Then suddenly there was a faint sound of horses' hooves on the road. Surely no one was out on a horse in this weather. Was it a dream? No. There it was again. Despite the sound of the storm, the hoofbeats were very clear but faint, obviously a long way off. Then I could hear a second horse, again clear but distant. John stopped his darts and looked at the landlord, and he in turn stood upright, frowning. All 3 of us looked towards the door. The sound was almost hypnotic. I had no idea of time, no idea how long it took the horses to arrive outside. The outside floodlights came on automatically. and through the rain-streaked glass we could see two horses, their riders hooded and motionless black shapes, seemingly staring in through the uncurtained windows. And the floodlight seemed to fuse, and it went dark again outside. The door catch clicked and the wind crashed the door open. Rain splattered onto the floor. A tall figure in a black hooded cloak came in, dripping water. It walked to the bar and seemingly without talking had the barman serve him a whiskey. A second figure came in, again hooded and cloaked. This cloak was grey and dirty, and as he walked the cloak trailed along the floor, leaving a wet trail on the tiles. The water in this trail seemed to attract the light, and it showed iridescent rainbow colours that seemed to writhe on the floor of their own accord, like oil on the top of water. This figure walked slowly to the fire and stood directly in front of it, inches from my feet. He stares into the motionless fire. Seemingly without there being a draught, the flame slowly licked out towards him, and the smoke from the fire began to curl round the figure. Steam joined the smoke as the heat got into his cloak, and it corkscrewed around the still silent figure, disappearing into his deep hood. We stared at the two figures. The one at the bar held his glass in white, seemingly skeletal figures. The one next to me, his hood staring at the fire, suddenly seemed to take a deep breath. Steam and smoke and then long flames from the fire spiraled around him, disappearing into the hood. And then, in an eruption of cinders and a roar, the fire itself blazed as it followed the smoke into the hood. The other put his glass on the counter, and they both walked to the door. There was no sound other than the slowly retreating sound of the horses' hooves. The fireplace was absolutely empty of fire. The next day, John gave up his coal business and became a very successful seller of solar panels. I invested all my savings and my pension in renewable energies, and the barman invested in a biomass heating system for his pub. I still remember with love and a little regret watching those coal fires. But we realized we had met two of the horsemen of the apocalypse. Death, luckily on his way to meet someone else, and a recent addition to that particular stable, pollution. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed them.